The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. That William Gibson quote keeps popping into my head as Robinhood absolutely explode after their latest announcement. We're talking about a company that just figured out how to let Europeans trade US stocks using crypto tokens. And honestly, I'm not sure if people fully grasp how wild this actually is. This could change everything. So before I dive into this whole madness, keep in mind that this entire video is not financial advice. Everything I'm sharing here is based on my own opinion and research. So Robinhood stock went ballistic. We're talking serious gains here, after they announced they're launching these tokenized versions of US stocks and ETFs for European users. But this isn't just, hey, we're expanding to Europe. This is Robinhood basically creating a parallel financial universe where you can trade Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, all the big names, but through crypto tokens instead of traditional shares. I actually had to double check I wasn't reading some sci-fi article. They're literally tokenizing US stocks, so Europeans can trade them 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. While Americans are sleeping, Europeans could be trading tokenized Tesla shares. While Europeans are having dinner, someone in Asia could potentially be trading these tokens too. This breaks down so many traditional barriers, it's making my head spin. Think about how massive this is. We're talking about essentially creating a global, always-on market for US equities that runs parallel to the traditional NYSE and NASDAQ. The sheer audacity of saying, we're just going to rebuild how international stock trading works is either genius or completely insane. And honestly, knowing Robinhood's track record, it's probably both. I remember when Robinhood first launched and everyone was calling them the Uber of stock trading. Well, now they're becoming the crypto exchange of traditional stocks, and that feels like an even bigger disruption waiting to happen. But here's where it gets really insane, and this is the part that has me most excited. They're planning to offer tokens for private companies like OpenAI and SpaceX. Wait, what? You could potentially trade shares of SpaceX through Robinhood tokens? That's not just innovative, that's revolutionary. Suddenly, retail investors might get access to companies that have been completely off limits unless you're an accredited investor with serious cash. Different time zones, currency conversions, multiple fees, regulatory hoops. Now, Robinhood is basically saying, what if we just made all of that go away? Instead of dealing with traditional cross-border trading infrastructure, you just buy tokens that represent the stocks you want. The crypto integration angle is brilliant too. Robinhood has been building their crypto platform for years, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much. But this move? This leverages all that crypto infrastructure they've built and turns it into a competitive advantage for stock trading. That's smart business. Actually, let's talk about timing for a second, because this announcement comes at a pretty interesting moment. The crypto market has been maturing. Regulations are getting clearer in many jurisdictions. And there's this growing acceptance that blockchain technology can actually solve real problems, instead of just creating speculative bubbles. What really gets me excited is thinking about the implications. If Europeans start trading significant volumes of US stocks through Robinhood's tokens, what stops this from expanding globally? What stops this from becoming the standard way to trade international stocks? We could be watching the birth of a completely new financial infrastructure. The 24/5 trading aspect alone is huge. I mean, think about it. News breaks about Apple at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and currently, US investors just have to wait until markets open to react. But if Europeans are trading tokenized Apple shares around the clock, that creates this always-on global market for US equities. That's going to change market dynamics in ways we probably can't even predict yet. I keep coming back to this private company angle though, because that could be the real game changer. Getting access to pre-IPO companies has always been one of those exclusive club things. If Robinhood can actually democratize that through tokenization, they're not just expanding geographically, they're expanding what's possible for retail investors. Of course, there are going to be skeptics, and honestly, some of the skepticism is probably justified. How do these tokens actually relate to the underlying stocks? What happens if there's a liquidity crisis? How do corporate actions like dividends or stock splits work with tokens? These are complex questions that will need solid answers. But you know what? Every major financial innovation faced similar questions. When Robinhood first eliminated trading fees, people asked how they'd make money. When they introduced fractional shares, people questioned the mechanics. Yet here we are. And those innovations became industry standard. The regulatory aspect is going to be fascinating to watch. European financial regulators are generally pretty sophisticated, but this blends traditional securities with crypto in ways that don't fit neatly into existing frameworks. Robinhood is basically betting that they can navigate this regulatory complexity better than their competitors. From a business perspective, this move makes total sense for Robinhood. They've been looking for ways to diversify beyond their core US market, and Europe represents a massive opportunity. Plus, by building this on their existing crypto infrastructure, they're probably able to launch faster and cheaper than if they tried to build traditional international brokerage capabilities. Competitive implications are interesting too. How do traditional European brokers compete with 24/5 trading of US stocks? How do they compete with access to private companies? Robinhood is forcing the entire industry to rethink what's possible. I've been thinking about the user experience aspect as well. One of Robinhood's core strengths has always been making complex financial products feel simple and accessible. If they can make tokenized stock trading feel as easy as buying regular stocks, that's a huge advantage. Most crypto trading platforms are still pretty intimidating for regular people. There's also this meta-narrative about Robinhood reinventing itself. Remember, this company went through some pretty serious challenges a few years ago with the GameStop situation and various regulatory issues. But instead of playing it safe, they're doubling down on innovation. That takes guts. The numbers from the market reaction tell the story pretty clearly. When a fintech company's stock surges on news about international expansion and tokenization, that means investors see real potential. It's like they're saying, we're not going to be defined by our past mistakes. We're going to build the future of finance instead. Most companies would probably retreat to safer, more traditional strategies after facing that kind of scrutiny. But Robinhood is essentially betting their entire reputation on being the company that makes the impossible seem obvious. It's not just hype. People are putting money behind the belief that this strategy can work. What's particularly clever is how this positions Robinhood in the broader crypto ecosystem. They're not just another crypto exchange competing with Coinbase and Binance. They're using crypto technology to enhance traditional financial services. That's a differentiated value proposition that could be really powerful. I keep wondering about the knock-on effects though. If this works in Europe, what's to stop Robinhood from expanding to Asia, Latin America, everywhere? We could be looking at Robinhood becoming this global platform for tokenized stock trading. That's a much bigger vision than just being a US discount broker. The private company access thing still blows my mind. Imagine being able to buy SpaceX tokens on your phone, the same way you currently buy Apple stock. The genius here is that very few companies have the scale, regulatory relationships, and technical infrastructure to pull something like this off. You need millions of users, serious crypto capabilities, regulatory approval in multiple jurisdictions, and the financial backing to make it work. That's an incredibly rare combination. Most fintech startups dream about this kind of innovation, but simply don't have the resources or credibility to execute at this level. Even established players like traditional banks or pure crypto exchanges would struggle to bridge both worlds as seamlessly as Robinhood is attempting. That level of democratization could fundamentally change how private companies think about liquidity and employee compensation too. There are definitely risks to consider. Crypto markets can be volatile, regulatory changes could disrupt the model, and there are technical challenges with any new financial infrastructure. But the potential upside seems enormous if they can execute properly. Looking at this from a competitive angle, I'm curious how other brokers respond. Do they try to build similar tokenization capabilities? Do they lobby against it? Do they partner with crypto companies? This move by Robinhood is going to force industry-wide innovation. The timing with the broader fintech landscape is interesting too. Think about it. If SpaceX employees can suddenly trade their equity on Robinhood tokens instead of waiting years for liquidity events, that completely changes the startup compensation game. Companies like OpenAI or Stripe might start viewing tokenization as a legitimate way to provide employee liquidity without going through traditional IPO processes. The competitive pressure on established brokers like Charles Schwab or Interactive Brokers is going to be intense. They're probably scrambling right now to figure out if they can replicate this, or if they need to acquire crypto capabilities fast. Meanwhile, pure crypto exchanges like Coinbase are probably kicking themselves for not thinking of this first. since they had all the tokenization infrastructure but never thought to apply it to traditional stocks. This whole situation perfectly illustrates how the lines between crypto, traditional finance, and international markets are completely blurring. And Robinhood just positioned themselves right at the center of that convergence. We're seeing convergence between traditional finance and crypto everywhere. PayPal offers crypto, banks are launching digital assets, and now Robinhood is tokenizing stocks. These aren't separate industries anymore. They're becoming one integrated ecosystem. What excites me most is that this feels like just the beginning. If tokenized stocks work, what about tokenized bonds, commodities, real estate? Robinhood might be opening the door to tokenizing everything, and that could reshape finance completely. Honestly, whether you love or hate Robinhood, you have to respect this move. They're not just following trends, they're creating them. In an industry that often moves slowly, Robinhood keeps finding ways to move fast and break things. Sometimes that causes problems, but sometimes it creates the future. The European expansion combined with tokenization feels like one of those, if it works, it changes everything moments. And based on the market reaction and the strategic logic, I'm betting it's going to work pretty well. So if you liked the video and are generally interested in the latest updates about the potentially next big players of tomorrow, leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and hopefully I see you in the next video again.